Kia ora everyone, and welcome to the first Te Pūtaiaki Manatonga Association of Educators Beyond the Classroom webinar for 2023. A huge welcome to everyone who is either coming in live or watching via the YouTube recordings. It's a really great webinar to kick this year's off. Just before we do take things too far, I'm going to open us with karakia. Whakatakati hau ki te uru, whakatakati hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. So welcome everyone. It is really fabulous to be back this year. As most of you know, if you've been following along for the last couple of years, we were fortunate to have a project team working with Te Pūtaiaki Manatonga over the last 16 months. We are now back to committee managed everything. So our webinars won't be as frequently as they have been, or our newsletters or anything, but please keep in mind that we are here. And if you're interested in running a webinar or being part of the committee, just let us know. I'd really like to acknowledge all those who have been impacted by the recent weather events around the country. Our thoughts are very much with those in the flood-prone areas or any damaged or whānau, anybody that's really been impacted by it. If there's anything the association can do, please do let us know. And as I said, you're very much in our thoughts and how we can help. On that note, welcome. I'd like to introduce our first guest, Anjie Webster. Now, some of you will have seen that at the end of last year, we launched the Digital Safety Toolkit that Anjie and her company Generation Online developed for us with the cultural and heritage sector in mind. So I'm going to hand straight over to Anjie, who's going to take us through the toolkit and give us some general information around online safety. So kia ora, Anjie, thanks so much for your work, both with the booklet, but also for being here with us today as we kick off our webinar series for 2023.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. It's a real privilege to have been invited to, as part of this project, come along and share a webinar. So I'm just going to share my screen with some slides and dive in. Okay, hoping you can all see that, okay? Okay. All righty. How are we looking? Has that come through? Yes. Oh. That's interesting. I'll just see, what are you seeing on your screen at the moment? Just me. All right, let's do this again. Technology. Yeah, all righty. I will go to that. Brilliant. Okay. Just go to the share screen. How's that looking now? Oh, fabulous. All righty. So look, I'm Anjie Webster. I'm Wellington based and the founder of Generation Online. And I come from an education background. I have worked in Auckland, born and bred Auckland, and taught in Auckland, Hawke's Bay, and had the real joy of living there for 13 years. And so, you know, hand on heart, just remembering and thinking of people there and the needs that are there at the moment. And in fact, there's an image there of the arm of my husband and myself on one of the tracks down in Hawke's Bay. Cycling is big in our blood. So look, I come from an education background, like I said, and in Generation Online, I have partnered with the Light Project, Mindshift, a small cybersecurity organisation, Life Education, Net Safe, and I am a Ministry of Education facilitator. I'm a cyclist and an unlikely online gamer, which has brought me into a world that I didn't think I would ever understand. But it has given me great insights to not only understand the research around gaming and its benefits and challenges, but also to find that I have a real joy and a lot of fun in that environment and with communities around the world. So look, some of the other photos there are my two gorgeous growing up daughters now. And so while they were teenagers and I was teaching in Hawke's Bay at an all-boys school, a year 1 to 8 school, all of the sorts of platforms that we know and enjoy today, like Facebook, etc., were evolving. And I was seeing simultaneously the way younger boys students were using those spaces, my teenage daughters and myself as well. And I found myself fascinated around both the opportunities and clearly the challenges and safety aspects that were emerging. And so it led me to do my master's in education and research, particularly in the space for young people and the concepts of privacy and challenges to that when they're online. And we then made a move to Wellington, and at that time NetSafe had offered a couple of roles on the back of being appointed the agency with the Harmful Digital Communications Act that had been passed the year previously. So I had 5 years with NetSafe as an education advisor, and have seen sort of the worst online, but also it drove me to think about how to proactively support whānau, kaiako, young people, and people in organisations around thinking proactively how to keep themselves safe and how to blend both the knowledge of regulation and legislation with an ease of feeling confident in their own practice in the classroom or in their own lives. So it was a joy to be brought into this project to create a guide or a toolkit that would be something that would be easy to read, interesting, and yet convey some of those key messages. And thinking about what were key messages for this sector, that was a really interesting opportunity to think about those who may be really confident with the technologies and online platforms through to those who may have less interest or experience in some of those and their own sort of social connectivity online or and what they do with students or in a sense with what you do in and within your organisation. So I kept it as light but as informative as possible across 4 sections, and popping in their opportunities to self-reflect as well. And obviously we know with that, with the booklet itself, after each section, a nice little next steps and a review operating like a checklist would be maybe helpful. So in a nutshell, when we think about online, we're all in the same puddle. I think this photo describes beautifully as an image that concept. We're all different. We're in the same puddle and our experiences may be different from each other or at different times. And I often use a slide with parents and with teachers and say, you've got students who are different ages and stages and levels. And on any given day, they might be feeling like that little dog that was nearly buried in the puddle, or they might have had a whale of a time. And so marrying the different experiences, expectations that are on us and the regulations and legislation was the goal of this toolkit. So what I'm going to do is just really quickly dive in and light brushstroke across the different sections, thinking around online safety, cybersecurity, and kickstarting with that, and differentiating when we think about safety. It's about ourselves, keeping ourselves safe, our connections with others, and security, thinking how we secure information, content, and data. And there are different skills and different ways we do that. So into the booklet, I just popped in there a reminder or a nudge to think about, blocking and understanding where the tools sit, reporting tools. We often talk in schools with young people about empowering them to report behaviour. It's a call to action that is empowering, but also necessary to call out things that aren't okay when we see them. So bringing it to the attention of the site and having the confidence that no one else is going to know that. It's just you reporting within the site. The privacy options that are available to us, the ability to delete. So not only deleting content that we might want to take down or are finished with, but we can also delete and unsubscribe And I think part of that's really helpful for our own well-being as well when we are digital users, when we think about our inbox, whether we think about in our own lives the numbers of things we might be subscribed to, and all of that, if we can tighten and unsubscribe to things that actually can tidy up and take a little bit of that overwhelm away from us. Muting and unfollowing. So knowing there's a variety of tools and settings that do empower us to make choices around what we share, who we let in, who we have allowed access to our content, and who it's time for just maybe stepping back from, or what organisations. Connecting safely with others. This is an interesting one when you think organisationally or then personally. That feeling where you've sent an email and you think, oh my goodness, I was supposed to put a whole lot of BCC. I was supposed to have a lot of private email addresses, and I sent it out all under a CCC, and that sinking feeling. Or sometimes, we did a draft and we sent it before we'd reviewed it, but we had forgotten we really need to review the content. We can get caught up in this, and so it's feeling confident that we can take steps forward that move us forward positively. So some of that is about being able to follow up and own our mistakes, and not being afraid to say I got it wrong, or I'm sorry, or this is an updated version. Some of it is just really using the tools and being mindful about keeping things private, making sure we've got strong passwords, using PINs. So limiting access, remembering that everything we do, we leave a digital footprint as well. It can be untidy out there. I was just thinking where I just read on the primary teachers Facebook page, something where a person has taken on more leadership roles, but they're really finding that they're getting a lot of pretty heavy emails back from parents at the moment that feel unfiltered and feel very overwhelming to the staff member, and yet they were probably not tailored in the way that they would speak to someone face to face. And so, intention and tone and things like that are important. So being respectful and kind. So just, making sure that when things do go wrong online, there's degrees of severity that go with that. And if you have got any concerns around that, first port of call is own it, reach out, speak to the people within your organisation if it's possibly of a serious nature. If it's something within your control to change or to take control over, making sure that you do those steps. We can be frozen in the moment sometimes, as young people can be, when they may feel they've done something wrong, but taking steps is really important. Making sure that if it's a breach of information or if it's serious around content, that we are thinking around privacy commission and our responsibility to report. So connecting with them to have a conversation, or net safe. So also thinking too, who else are in our world, in our space that we may have influence or responsibility for, or may mentor or just be able to help. So thinking about elderly people in our lives, thinking about younger people, and checking in with them and, saying, how you going? How's it going online? What's happening? Are you okay? Things like that. So, there are options there with ways that we can positively control when we think cybersecurity and protecting what's important to us, our taonga. So those strong passwords, two-factor authentication, keeping devices updated, password manager. So there's, I think there's LastPass is one I use. They have free versions and there are paid versions for that, and that's helpful if you've got a lot of passwords to remember. Scams, phishing, CERT-NZ. So understanding the role of CERT and what you can do with them if you're concerned about any emails or contact that you're not sure about. They are a great port of call and have got a really good presence now online. And you can connect with them and send them things like the URL or aspects of emails, and they'll do a check for you. So really good to connect with, understanding the services. I did pop this into the booklet. I thought, look, these things may date, the link may change, but Google have got a wonderful, if you haven't done it, hop on this wonderful quiz that will help check your knowledge around emails and how secure or safe they may be. And it's very helpful because when you get something wrong, and I am pretty sure that you'll probably find you get something wrong in this quiz. I certainly did. And I feel I know stuff, but I don't know everything at all. It then teaches you about, what you need to know. So do pop on there. Mindshift, that organisation I mentioned I've partnered with in the past, they have got fabulous resources there and posters. So do dive onto their website as well, and those posters might be really helpful in the workplace. And as I said, CERT, and one of the things CERT have got is a great quiz as well about how cyber secure you are. So what's lovely about these is that they, Mindshift and CERT are Aotearoa. They are, culturally appropriate and personal to us. All right, diving just straight into the legislation section and just touching really briefly on the Harmful Digital Communications Act. And it's just really good to know that we've got this legislation here in Aotearoa. And it was designed on the back of lots of things that were happening for quite some years, from about 2011. The legislation was passed in 2015, but lots of things were happening online that weren't okay, and people were being harmed. And we started to see things like, some of you might remember the roast busters, and the things that they were doing online, these young men and, young underage women. So with that in mind, legislation that is there around our rights. So we have the right to enjoy the online space in positive, safe ways. We know, though, unfortunately, that there are bad actors out there, and it just isn't always that way. So the communication principles outline what a digital communication shouldn't look like or do. And just, you'll see those in the booklet there, but it covers quite a wide array of the sorts of things that go wrong online. So it's designed to stop or prevent ongoing harm from things happening in the online space. Importantly, what is a digital communication? Interestingly, it's things like photos, videos, comments, voice messages, emails, any social media, text and chats and games. It's wide. What it isn't is a phone call. And often it's not a phone call because they're not usually being recorded, or in some instances they are, but generally they're not. So there's no trail of evidence that goes with it. But where there can be that trail, and we know the police are able to get in and behind and, quite deeply into spaces that we're locked out of, there is that ongoing longevity of all things staying online, hence that digital footprint. So, that first call is, don't engage directly with people online, block that person, report the content of the platform it's on, and take note of the URL or the timestamp. That if it's in a social media post, it's often timestamped, the URL or a screenshot of the conversations or the content that's online, so that you can report that. Getting content down as soon as possible is often really, really important to stemming that online harm. And NetSafe can do that very quickly on our behalf. As long as they've got URL or evidence of it, they can't go into private spaces themselves. The other aspect around the legislation is that it also has to breach the terms and conditions on the site that it's on. And that previously has been really tricky. It hasn't always breached their terms and conditions, but has been harmful. However, now and in this day, we're seeing way more accountability from these platforms, and content can and often does get taken down quicker. So look, I'm going very lightly through the booklet, but the call to action there around being familiar with the legislation. Schools are named in the legislation. They're named in that, there is a principal or someone in their role, acting in their role, may support a student who may take a situation of harm happening to them to NetSafe, and NetSafe will then support them if harm is happening to them and the person creating that harm doesn't stop it. It can go through a civil court process. So NetSafe helps with the paperwork and that process to get someone set up to take that further into the civil court. So schools are clearly named in this legislation, hence I put it into this guide. And the other important one, which is probably most relatable, is that if you have a website or any online platforms that you're using as learning tools, you are an online content host under that legislation, and you've got those responsibilities to understand that and to acknowledge that should anyone have any concerns about what's happening, that you would take action and you would process that in all the normal ways you do under your complaints policy. And that sits very clearly under sort of schools and the responsibilities, but organisations also have to have complaints policies. So understanding a simple statement in your complaints policy will cover you. So that was really important as well. And I gave an example. And so also that legislative place, that requirement around privacy practices is very important, especially with the changes in 2020 that came through. And now, you know, there is a requirement that if any breaches happen, that you would report those to, obviously, within house, there's a chain, a hierarchy of command around what you do in terms of processes and protocols. But if you're a smaller organisation and you're the privacy officer, being aware of, you know, taking that through and what that means to us. Privacy Commission have got this sorted with their website and the tools that are available. And I hope that you get a chance to dive in sometime and just pop in and have a look and have a go. And they can generate a privacy statement for your website. There's training there. The privacy office, which all organisations have to have. I just summarised some of those responsibilities there in the guide. But again, there is support there for all of you in their port site, which is a roundtable volunteer group that are incredibly supportive. So hopefully within there, when you get a chance and time and go onto those links, you can dive in. So just going through the next steps, using that as a checklist too, popping through, checking, are you familiar? Who's your privacy officer? If you're that officer, again, stepping into making sure that you've done a little bit of a review at the start of the year. And check in, maybe take on the online privacy training modules. They're really easily accessible, and they've done them in a nice way, easy to read, easy to learn. And then copyright at a glance. And I won't go into that much at all because you're probably quite familiar with this working in the organisations that you do. But, you know, heads up on what you need to know. They've got e-learning options there to help you make sure, again, that you're refreshed at the start of this year with perhaps any changes or updates, or just being familiar again. I sort of think of this content like, you know, first aid training, and how it's not necessarily always palatable. It might feel dry, but having those skills is just great. And these days, these organisations do such a lovely job of providing in a fun way. So thinking too around the copyright space, just popped in some really neat resources and things where you may need sound bites, you might want illustrations. They were just some of a few that are out there, and I find Unsplash and Pixabay, Pexels, tremendous sites. There's also free pics and others, but that's just a safe way of being able to get images to use. This section here was around working with ākonga in safe ways. There's probably lots more in there that is not necessarily what's within your lane that you may feel that you have to use, but having that understanding in today's environment where so much learning happens online and so much life is lived, how many relationships and friendships, you know, are nurtured in that space for the young people you work with. It's just helpful to understand the evolving landscape that we're in. So just thinking around the digital tools that we use and being familiar with those tools, engaging with students, how they may source and use the student data, our data. Common Sense Educator website is an incredible resource. You have to create a free account to use it. It's an American site, but it's incredibly comprehensive around positive resources, talking about education tools, digital tools that we use, and gives us a heads up around privacy aspects around those tools and how safe they are and how ethical they are as tools. So just thinking around when we're using digital tools, things to think about. I put in there, how long are we going to use that tool for, and how long is that student content going to be used? If they're uploading or if we're taking some of their learning and sharing it in spaces that we're responsible for, that we are hosting. Have we shared that information with them? Have we given them, an option to buy into that, as opposed to an assumption that we can just take their images or their videos or their learning or videos that they appear in? Have we sought that consent from their schools, their whānau and students themselves, with the ability to say, is it okay? So this is really just a self-check, really, with a variety of lenses that give us a nudge to think about what's relevant, what's helpful, what's ethical, and what's regulatory. And so that's just something to provide a bit of a steer for you. I popped in, these are quite wordy and they don't have to be. You can use icons and then, small sentences for agreements. All I wanted to do was because the toolkit is so full of a lot of visual language in there, I wanted to put something together with the ideas around an agreement template that you can absolutely adapt. And you can put little icons if you wanted to make it, less about words and just several bullet points. You can co-create that with a school if you wanted to, or you can use theirs. But it's important that you sort of probably set up an environment where your safety as the kaiako and their safety is considered, and also around the consent around not only the environment that you're in, but also using anything if there is any recording or they sharing any kind of content with you. Also, the ethical part of that is making sure that they feel that there are some boundaries around behavior. So you set it up with that, beautiful, ethical, there's going to be a great learning time, but we just want to make sure that if there are any questions or if, anything happens in this space, that we are thinking around, just the respect in the room that we're in. And so to support that, putting your hands up, so you're building that environment that you're in, and that's not necessarily new to any of you. But also wrapping it around the safety of being in the online space, and just having that expectation set that should there be anything that goes wrong, that's something that we will, just have to follow up, with your teacher, etc. So just pulling all the ideas. Same with the digital safety guidelines template when we think about, as a staff member. So there's a lot in that. And there may be things that aren't in that are important in your organisation that you'd want to put in. But making sure that it's driven by the values of your organisation, that we're thinking that we're also thinking about the values and the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. So participation and contributing, protection, and our partnerships. And we're thinking how that looks like in a digital environment. Consent, copyright, communicating, partnering. Yeah. So again, that little checklist there to be able to just review, have a think about, consider, and, what's next steps have we done that? What can we park? What's all okay? So just options too, to stay up with the newsletters of NetSafe and CERT. So that'll keep us, they're a monthly newsletter, I think, from both organisations, and they'll talk about some of the latest things. It'll just keep us up in that space. So professionally, it's really powerful, and in our own personal lives, they give us conversations to have around our dinner table with those we share Kai with, whether they be younger or older, and just checking in. ID care and copyright as well, just being able to keep in and up to date with their information. And just finishing in a moment, but just wrapping all of this around that well-being. Te Whare Tapawhara is such an amazing model when we think about young people, preschoolers, parents, kaimahi, organisations. And if we think about the way that we live so much life online now, our learning, our working, our entertainment, our connections, and children of such much younger ages are engaging with more time online as well, that actually there's so many different factors around even just the time spent on a screen, our bodies and how we look after our eyes and our posture, our mental health, the impact on our attention these days, where the sites and platforms are designed to keep us in as long as possible. And therefore the functionalities like infinite scrolling that was designed so that people didn't have to go from a web page to a web page. It was just the ability to scroll now. So much functionality is designed to keep us in and on. And with that neurological response that's happening when we think about our young people and our children, where adrenaline, thinking the gaming environments, social media, dopamine, all cortisone, all of these various chemical responses that are happening, just having an impact. And so I think Te Whare Tapawhara is a beautiful way to finish our session here also, but in the booklet to think about our whole selves and our engagement, and those we engage with and those we have some influence or connection with. And it's all about balance. So as we come to a close, I'm just happy to chat or answer any questions that might be in the room.
Sure, Angie. While we're waiting for people to jump in and offer their questions, if anyone's got any, you can put them in the chat or ask via mic. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about two-factor authentication. I noticed when you were talking about keeping yourself safe online and password security, two-factor authentication is something that not people are becoming more familiar with. But can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, good. Thank you for that. Yes, you sometimes hear these terms and they feel technical and overwhelming, and you think, what is that? It sounds too hard. I know I felt like that for a while, and then I was sort of in various organisations made to have two-factor authentication. So whether it be curiosity or, a requirement, these things are helpful. So it's a lovely double layer of security. So for those who aren't familiar, for example, when I sign into different platforms on my laptop, I'm also required to enter in a verification code that I pick up on my phone. And so it's because I've chosen my phone as the device that I will receive a text on. Sometimes I might have chosen that I might receive an email with a code, and so I may not need a separate device to verify. I may be able to pop into my emails to pick up a numerical code. But what it does is it puts two layers of security around proving you are the person you are. And so when I sign into Microsoft, when I work with different organizations and different contracts, I will have an email. I log in and I have a password, and it will say you need to verify this and seek your code from your text. We've texted you, or like I say, your email, and then I just type that into the space that's provided, press send or whatever it is, and then it will just take in that information and it will recognize I am the authentic user, and then it will allow me into the platform. And so a lot of platforms do give an option to have two-factor. So if you're wondering about any of them, what you can do is search first in the web browser you use, would be Google or Explorer or whatever. You might look up the platform you're particularly interested in setting up two-factor authentication, and then putting in, the name and two-factor authentication, and then seeing if it has that set up, and then what steps to step through. And it's not too difficult to jump through that. These days, they've made it way more accessible.
Great, thank you. That was a great explanation. Are there any other questions or thoughts? See, there's some typing happening, so we'll just wait to see what might come through. While we're waiting for that question to come through, I can see that people are digesting, and there's a comment there from Mel thanking for the resource. She used it several ways, which is fantastic. One of the things I love about it, and possibly if you flick through it, you will have seen it, is that each of these pages can be pulled out. So you don't need to read the whole thing in one go. You can, particularly if you've got the online version, you might just choose to print out something, perhaps like the Whare Tapu Whā model, and put it just up on the walls of your education space or anywhere like that. It's a great tool just to be able to work through, and not just for our education. It can be relevant for any of our cultural and heritage spaces.
Yes, I think too, if it's helpful, I have got some resources that are free on my website on generationonline.nz, and there are two versions actually of the Te Whare Tapu Whā poster that are free on there that would print out, as a separate PDF. And they're just represented in just different ways. One perhaps for more junior children, and the other one is in the booklet here. But you're welcome to, if there are any resources that are on the website, to help yourself and download.
Great. Well, it looks as though there may not be any questions. And if you're watching this during watching the recording later on, which we know so many people do, perhaps you can put the question on Facebook. We won't have Anjie directly to be able to tap into, but I think maybe as a community on Facebook, it might be something we're able to talk about and respond. And I just see B106290 has commented on being mindful of safety in digital spaces is a fairly new area for people. And I think it is for most of us, and it changes constantly. I used to be in this world, not with the expertise that Anjie has, but I used to keep up to date. And it's funny when you're not across it constantly, just even how much it changes with the speed of technology.
That's right. And it is a really evolving space. We were just talking, Tara and I, before the webinar, just as you may have heard, ChatGPT has been talked about, the AI, and it's just sort of everywhere online. People are talking about it and weighing up its merits and its opportunities and vulnerabilities. And we will continue to see technologies evolve, and mindful of the younger generations and the parenting cohorts that are coming through. And we know so many more much younger children have access to screens, and often in autonomous ways. And we also know from research, that's having various impacts and implications on things to do with their neurology, like their visual cortex. Their ability to see the whole visual language is strengthening in comparison to their language acquisition and comprehension, which is showing more of a delay. And so with this, we're seeing changes, societal, neurological, and so, yeah, just, you know, the whole wider implications of digital technology is something that, by staying up to date and being aware and always thinking too around that balance, and that safe, that ethical, that secure lens is really helpful. Yes, I know. So I'm just seeing the response there and the neurological cognitive changes. I know they some research. I'm not sure, Tara, about time. So just tell me if so I know just in something I'm reading at the moment, just research out of the States showed that the decline in adults reading books, primarily paperback books, doesn't matter, fiction, non-fiction, just reading a book that has, you know, some length to it, some chapters, is so declined. It's like down to about 50% of those who, you know, used to enjoy reading a lot more, and now they're expressing that they are reading things online in that sort of banquet style, you know, hopping from this. And I mean, I know I do a lot of that as well. And I look at the news there, and then I'll jump into LinkedIn there, and then I'll have a look at something else and have a deeper read of something. And it's skirting and jumping, and that ability to stay with something and dive deeper for a longer period of time is, you know, I'm constantly battling that in myself, and I could really relate to this research that's come out. The interesting thing about that aspect around reading books is that many adults have reflected that reading a book has been something in the past that has been really helpful and well-being. It's been a joy. It's been that relaxed, I lose myself, I go somewhere else space. It's been part of that, what we call flow. And when we think about well-being, having flow space and time is really important to us in the broader scope of, you know, being at home in our own skin, our well-being, our haora. So yeah, really interesting implications. Yeah, so I think having that was a beautiful way. Having this poster was, I think, a beautiful way to finish the booklet. And I hoped this page as well, that had resources for whānau and family, that they would be something that could be helpful as well. There's loads of resources, and that's my space in my business. But putting in some key ones there, I thought would be of interest and fun.
So Mel's put the link in the chat again. She's been good at putting the links in as we've gone through with different things that Angie's been talked about. So if you don't have a copy, download it online. We do have a couple of hard copies left in the office. So if you haven't got one and would like one, just send me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat very shortly so that you've got that in case you want a copy. But we've only got a few left. So first in, first served really with that. Look, Angie, I really want to thank you, one, for your willingness and the care that you've taken with this toolkit. It was something we weren't expecting to do with Te Pūti Ake Manatonga, and we had the opportunity, and we knew there was a need. Well, in fact, you guys told us there was a need. So it was really wonderful to be able to have Angie come in and do that for us and work with both Mel and I on pulling that together. Drawing on her expertise over many years of working with schools in this space. I also want to thank you for your time today, coming in and kicking off the first webinar with us and sharing your knowledge and talking us through some of the resources and the wealth of information that's available in the Safety Toolkit. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. It's been a privilege working with you, Tara and Mel, and lovely to share with you all. And I hope that you find some really helpful parts to the booklet, the toolkit, and that the whole thing would help you feel more confident over time as you find the time to be able to dive in and check out some of the links and the quizzes and things. So thank you so much for this afternoon. Ka kite.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll just close with karakia. Just before I close with karakia, our next webinar will be advertised in our newsletter. They're coming out twice a term now, so keep an eye on that space, and also on our Facebook page. they will be advertised. So I'll just close with whakatakati hau. Whakatakati hau ki te uru, whakatakati hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hia ki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, hu hauhu, ti hei, Māori ora. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Ka kite for now.